I'm totally humbled. Oops. I am completely humbled and excited to have all of my favorite people in one place, and to be able to present my research to all of you, and mostly to just be a part of this ongoing tradition with the IHE and your fabulous programs. So I am going to share my screen, and welcome to everyone who is with us. I think, are we sharing? I think we are. Great. So thank you, Scott and Kale, for inviting me to speak today at this third Thursday program. And thank you to Gloria and Howard Caslow, the chairs of the IHE, the board members, and others who've supported the organization for more than 20 years. It's astounding to see the successes of the program and to know that there are countless individuals who are part of this greater collaborative village that make up the components of the IHE. And so many of you are here today, and please, everyone, look at everyone's name, because you have all been a part of this journey all these years. From this project has really touched the lives of Nebraska educators, playwrights, passionate volunteers, and devoted professionals from within and outside the Jewish community. And the organization is a tremendous influencer and torch bearer for the state and for the survivors and their families. I've been asked, very politely, I must say, why I have chosen this path to go back to school at this age. And why did I need to put myself through this vigor and stress? Why did I leave Israel to study at UNL? And so in answer to this question, and one important thing I have learned from my mentor, Gloria Caslow, is that telling a good story is always an excellent starting point. But first, I'd like to mention that I am not from a survivor or World War II veteran family. My encounters with the Omaha Holocaust survivor community were initiated through planning the annual Yom HaShoah commemorations years ago, when I was the Community Jewish Cultural Arts Director. Little did I know that working with my program chair, Edie Tsabari, who is additionally an amazing friend for all of these years, that these relationships and connections would lead me to becoming a recipient of stories, a liaison to survivor families, and above all, responsible for sharing these narratives alongside my work in developing the IHE and Holocaust pedagogy. In the summer of 2017, while I was still living in Israel, I visited Omaha, and I was invited by Donna Walter to veteran Roy Long's graduation ceremony, where he was to receive an honorary doctorate of education at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Roy, then 95 years young, had spent many years speaking at schools to tell about his service and his unit's participation in the liberation of Orduf concentration camp. While we sat in the crowd, text messages started coming in through our phones about the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a far-right groups were including self-identified members of the alt-right, neo-Nazis, neo-fascists, and other white nationalists were gathering, ultimately leading to violence and the death of Heather Heyer. Here was the chancellor of the University of Nebraska highlighting the selfless acts of an American serviceman during World War II in the face of Nazi destruction, who later devoted his life to education and humanitarianism. In our backyard, hatred was filling the streets in Charlottesville and elsewhere. That same day, I found myself having a serious conversation with the chair of the UNL teaching department, who suggested I consider further studies in the theoretical aspects of Holocaust education and teaching methods. It didn't take me long to process what seemed like an incredible opportunity to incorporate my years of curriculum and pedagogy development and the relationships built with the survivor families and other experiences to elevate this knowledge through academic work. To be able to integrate what I had learned locally and internationally through my work at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum in Israel, as well as interactions with my professional group the Association of Holocaust Organizations. Higher education seemed like a logical path. But which one of these enormous endeavors should I take on and focus upon? I realized that I held memories that needed to be shared. I chose to come home to pay respect to our local survivor and liberator stories and individuals who establish a broader vision and an opportunity to establish this broader vision of how we work and interact with their legacies. My first 2 years at the College of Education at UNL included rigorous and inspirational coursework, learning about critical educational theories and methodologies that require us to consider the ways that we know and understand the world. The scholarship of Delgado Bernal, Bell Hooks, Paulo Freire, Janusz Korczak, to name a few, have provided a foundation for my personal framework of educational values, particularly when I look at racism and anti-Semitism in the framework of Holocaust education. If my goal is to help students or others understand the complexities of the Holocaust, then recognizing how basic systematic and institutional discrimination can lead to genocide is at the core of my objectives. In Holocaust education, we do not have the privilege of choosing only to teach about the Holocaust, because this unique historical tragedy undoubtedly seeps into our other discussions and historical developments. I have also had the opportunity to explore and learn about digital humanities at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. The scholar Burdick explains that digital humanities provides the space to formulate a cross-disciplinary study to bring social science research material to a new level through digital resources. I began to understand that utilizing digital humanities tools could provide a new opportunity and exploratory methods for learning about individuals and their experiences in the Holocaust. My doctoral research began to develop with the creation of an educational portal that can be used as a resource from a variety of perspectives. I'm fortunate to be working closely with Dr. Ari Cohen as my co-PI on the project. Pedagogue Ilan Illich claimed that technologies could guide the reconstruction of education to serve the need of varied communities, to promote democracy and social justice. The Nebraska Stories of Humanity, Holocaust Survivor and World War II Veteran Network and Educational Portal will be a dynamic public platform to centralize the history of Nebraska Holocaust survivors and World War II liberators through searchable stories, including testimony and other resources. The digital compilation of these stories intends to unify disparate historical resources. And locally acquired digitized documents, photographs, and heirlooms from survivor and veteran families and API networks will populate testimony, geographical and primary resources, and news articles in order to create a well-rounded and centralized collection. These aggregated resources are designed to be searchable through different pathways and repositories in order to enrich the stories. Centering on the unique stories of Nebraska Holocaust survivors and World War II veterans through a collection of resources preserves the memories of the individuals and establishes new research possibilities. A significant number of Holocaust survivors found refuge among Nebraskans before and following World War II. Their impact is worthy of recognition as a humanities collection of searchable narratives. These were individuals whose lives of tragedy turned productive in our Nebraska communities. And all of us know and have embraced so many of these individuals over the years. In no other place have their testimonies and other historical documentation been gathered to provide a Nebraska story and a central space for research and education utilizing these narratives. This slide begins to tell us the background of survivor settlement in our state from a meeting notification from the Jewish Federation. It also shows the struggles that were present for both the individuals arriving and the community collaboration and resources that were needed. The goals of this portal include providing an educational holding place for visitors to glean information, to provide a place where information can be drawn in from other places, although this is proving to be a little more challenging than I first thought because of sharing issues and all kinds of interesting things that I'm learning about the internet. Continuing to build a centralized space with aggregated materials, and providing opportunities for student research and community volunteers to contribute and grow as we proceed with the development of the site. It is important to mention here that our potential funders listen to our goals, but they encourage us to utilize the greater community network and Nebraska community to enhance our vision. And without this guidance, we wouldn't have gotten to this point today. Proudly, our concept has become a recognized project at the Center for Digital Research in the Humanities at the university. Having our project proposal accepted meant that I could work with a development team to build the back end of the portal. Developing the site is akin to building a well-planned architectural building, and you have to have structured and separate rooms. Each must be strategically constructed, designed, and fabricated. Student interns and volunteers input collected data that allow programmers, technicians, and designers to focus their expertise on these multiple components of the overall site. Highlighted here is one of the 5 individuals that we are including in our prototype. Clarence Williams was a staff sergeant with the 42nd Rainbow Infantry. He was among the thousands of men whose regiment liberated Dachau in April of 1945. Through the years, through IHE over the years, we've cultivated Clarence's story, and thanks to his son, Dr. Tom Williams, we've had access to incredible documents from his father, including a collection of over 250 letters that one of our student interns has transcribed. Other items of Clarence's include a meticulously documented photo album with photos that Clarence took during his tour. And the camera, this is not his actual camera, but the artifact from his collection is at the Strategic Air and Space Museum in the exhibit that still exists there. The site tools allow us to have searches among the items that are collected. You can see in this sample of our search engine that there are presently 618 searchable items that can be cross-referenced by different filters or categories. Here you can see Clarence and Gretchen Williams' names could be found both 236 times throughout the present collection, or you could even go to B. Carp, whose name could be found 42 times throughout the collection. You can imagine that reading anyone's handwriting is difficult, but here Clarence is writing to his wife, which he did almost every day for a year during his tour. And he mimics the motion of the rolling ship as it sails into the unknown throes of war. Through the encoding notations, you can read how he tells Gretchen, "Well, honey, we are still rolling over the deep blue sea. It has really been a grand sailing today. Beautiful sunshine and very warm. Also, the water has been calm, but I will still be glad when we set foot on land for a change." And you have to remember, this is December and they're going across the Atlantic Ocean. There are other letters that tell specifically about those who are struck with seasicknesses. He talks about the unpleasant food on the ship and dreaming about how he would like to go to the Lone Oak restaurant in South Lincoln. And of course, how much he misses his dear wife. Our intern, Ethan, was touched and astonished by this collection of letters. This slide presents the workings of the back end of building a site such as this. We want our users to make connections and find networks, part of the digital tools that we will be developing in our next phases. Here is B. Karp's grandmother holding her or her sister Susie, we're not 100% sure, in front of their home in Lauterbach, Germany in the early 1930s. On the lower left-hand corner, we see how careful documentation provides the connections of our highlighted story through names of family members and the relationships. Having multiple documents and ways to find individuals provides endless research possibilities to learn more about how these individuals, to learn more about these individuals as we situate them in their Holocaust experience. This slide maps a concept of preparing some networking with the Irving and Clara Shapiro family who settled in Gering, Nebraska. And thank you to Bob Wolfson, who brought their names to my attention years and years ago. An example on the right is of a well-developed digital humanities tool that has tracked and visualized the connections of a person interned in a Japanese internment camp in the Rising Above website. And you can see how intricate and how much research has gone on in this other site to track individuals and visualize who is connected to who. And that's one of the goals that we have for our site. We are also developing exciting mapping tools to visualize the journey of the narrated stories. Although we don't know the exact chronology where B. Karp was during her hiding in the French countryside with the Jewish underground, the Oze, we can provide some movement and utilize her collection to understand the struggle. In a translated postcard written to B in her chateau hiding spot from her mother, who was in the Rivesaltes transit camp, we read, "Today your lovely little package with bread and 2 rows from a chocolate bar arrived in good condition and is a real winner. Thank you so much, my darling little one. But you yourself, dear little Beate, you really shouldn't scrimp and go without yourself for our sake. It's a good thing that the bread is dried. That way it doesn't go moldy, and it tastes so good in coffee or soup. Again, thank you very much. Did you receive the sunglasses and the little red pinafore? I included a little blouse for you and what I sent to Marga Khan. Does it still fit? Can you wear it? Stay healthy, my darling good child. I kiss you with love. Your mama." Within a little over a year's time, Rosa Stern, as well as B's father, Moritz, were transported and murdered at Auschwitz. These artifacts viewed here were presented to the IHE by B's family, and now we are able to make incredible connections to the Red Apron. The capacity of the portal will allow us to include survivor testimonies, and hopefully we will have sharing rights for various stories. This coat shown here is in storage at History Nebraska, the Nebraska Historical Society, and was recovered and sent to the Rosenberg family in Lincoln. With internet options, we can hear Hannah tell about this coat at a History Nebraska program. Hopefully you can hear this. Can you hear it? Okay, so I have a recording. Let me see if I can play it again, and hopefully it will work. That didn't work. Okay, I'm going to go back just a moment.
Beth, if you go into the shared option and put share sound, you should be able to do it in the share screen area.
You see, there are all kinds of things to learn in the share screen. Share sound. Thank you, Scott.
Pleasure.
Ha. So much for being formal. Okay.
Benno and Hedwig were sent to initially to Theresienstadt in the in Czechoslovakia on September 2nd, 1942. On September 29th, they were sent on to Treblinka, an extermination camp in Poland, and were murdered there. Before Hedwig was deported, she gave the Persian lamb coat to a Christian neighbor for safekeeping. The neighbor buried the coat to hide it from the Nazis during World War II. After the war, she found my dad, Ludwig's address in Lincoln, and sent the coat to him.
So these are just more incredible stories that we have been discovering and are uploading into the portal. As a research project, we continue to adhere to the university's strategic aims, and we have had numerous opportunities to present the project in Nebraska forums and also at international digital conferences. The outreach and exposure has really helped our concept grow over the past 1.5 to 2 years. Going forward, the portal will be designed to demonstrate pathways to discover multidirectional memory, to support academics, educators, researchers, in acknowledging other histories of collective suffering. Designed specifically for Nebraska, the digital portal will include pedagogical connections to state educational standards, utilizing multidirectional memory to connect to other marginalized people. For example, we reside on the homelands of numerous American Indian nations, and the state has a significant history of federal refugee settlement. In recent years, Auschwitz survivor Kitty Williams has embraced the opportunity to support and share presentation time with Shireen Ibrahim, a survivor of the ISIS genocide of the Yazidi people, who was resettled in Lincoln, Nebraska. The scholar Rothberg is mindful that memory competition exists, but he reminds us that multidirectional memory can serve as a spur to unexpected acts of empathy and solidarity. And it is often the very grounds on which people construct and act upon visions of justice. The educational component of this portal is vital, and as I mentioned earlier, developing community and statewide partners has been essential. Our interns, 2 of them who are featured here, have expressed how valuable their work has been to this part of the project. We will continue to work with students in our data collection, and we will be developing formal educational lessons and learning tracks with the Nebraska Department of Education and also with the IHE as we go forward. Further, we intend to include community volunteers to help load materials and local survivor families into the transcribed UNL website. This opportunity allows us to gather documents in a holding place as we begin to envision the next steps of moving from a prototype to a full-fledged public portal. Last spring, our interns were required to put together a presentation for our UNL research days. And at the end of their presentation, they included this slide, which they felt summed up the importance of their work. And this was a quote that Bea had said in one of the testimonies that she had given at a school. "I tell the story in memory of my parents and the 6 million Jews that died. I don't want the world to forget. It's a lesson for the future, and the future is in your hands, and it's up to you to make sure nothing like that will ever happen again." So I certainly want to thank everyone who has come today there's so much more to tell, and wanted to be able to open it up for questions. These are our incredible supporters of the project, and we keep growing. And in our next phase, once our prototype is launched in April, even before that, we will be looking for some major funding to really be able to develop and grow this project.
Beth, thank you so much. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, so I would encourage people, if you would like to, turn your camera on, take yourself off mute, and ask Beth yourself. If that's not possible, I'll keep my eye on the chat so I can feed her the questions that come in. There were some tears, there was lots of smiles. This is such an incredible project and so labor intensive because all of the technology stuff is way over my head. But who would like to ask first? I'm giving a pleasant pause before I ask my question. Oh, Stan.
I'll break the ice. That's wonderful, Beth. I just have a very practical question. Is there a projected date at some point in the future where you think you'll complete the project, or is this going to be a lifetime project?
Thank you, Stan. So as I mentioned, the protocol with our 5 stories should be opening in April. This will be a continued project. It is an opportunity to start really collecting materials from our survivor families. You know, sadly, we have lost so many of our community survivors, but what is the flip side is that we have a lot of connections with their families. So we're hoping to just continue to grow this. I don't think there is such a thing as an end to this. And also protecting and being able to stay in tune with the technology and making sure things don't break and making sure that we can go forward. These are things that we need to be certain of as the project continues to develop.
Well, and that's kind of a good segue into Bob Wolfson's question in the chat with the technology, but otherwise, what are the barriers to your success?
There are a lot of barriers, but there's a lot of opportunity. So making this part of the village, we need people to help us feed information into the site, and sort of in the same framework as the IHE, that, you know, the IHE sits in these couple of offices with a minimal amount of individuals who steer the program, but there are many people who grow the program. And the barriers are making sure that we know who's interested in assisting, and also certainly financial issues going forward. But I'm hoping that this project will be something that can be seriously looked at through national grants and other state and local grants.
Beth, I have a question. You have 5 people's stories that you're using for this initial pilot. Do you have more people kind of in the queue that you can, I mean, I know that you can expand, but do you have kind of the next group identified, or are you kind of waiting until you can get kind of show this proof of concept, and do you need more funding or larger funding to really grow it, or do you have kind of some things in the works to grow after you launch?
So this is twofold, and thank you, Victoria. Victoria is with the Cooper Foundation and has been an incredible resource for the Institute for Holocaust Education, for UNL, for many, many places. And Bob Nevsky is here today as well. Yes, we do have individuals in the queue. We're starting slowly to develop those materials. The Center for Digital Research in the Humanities is, we complete our prototype in April, but we will continue as a project in that framework. So we have a home, and that is really fabulous. And at this point, we are looking for funding to really be able to grow. If that answered the question, I'm not sure.
I have a question. This is actually for Kale. I was at the play on Sunday at the J, and I've got two questions. Number one, I'm curious as to why the names of the survivors, their last names weren't listed unless I totally missed it. And number two, the play was like so fabulous. Is it going, in quotes, on the road to schools, etc.?
Well, just really quickly, so we don't take time away from Beth. It was planned to go on the road into schools, but because of COVID, that wasn't possible. So we used the funding that we were going to use for that to professionally record it so that we could still make it available to schools with some educational material and some talk back time with Scott and me. So that is the plan. I do not have my program right here beside me, but I am pretty sure in the advertising and promotion that the 4 survivors' full names were listed.
Oh,
It
that's
was listed in publicity. It was not on the program, and there was no reason for that.
All right, I was talking about the pictures in the gallery.
The pictures in the gallery, that actually would be a Beth question. As far as the portraits
I
of
think I know.
survival were created in 2008, and we'll leave that one for Beth to answer.
Okay. That project came about as the 70th anniversary of Kristallnacht was approaching, and we wanted to document as many individuals as we could as a tribute for that November commemoration. And David and a number of other people and I went running around taking pictures, and we really felt that we needed to protect individuals' privacy, and we knew that this book would probably get out there in the world, and so we did not want their names exposed. It was an intentional act and way that we've developed this project.
Thank you.
So back to the portal and the funding issue. This may be getting in the weeds, but in one of the times we were talking, you had described to me how labor intensive this is with one letter from Clarence Williams, not only the transcription, but the coding, and how much time that takes. Could you tell us just a little bit about that and why it takes so much time and needs, people to do this and money to pay people to do this?
Right. So to make this a searchable engine and utilize these incredible tools that I had no concept about before my life as a doctoral student, the idea is really that an individual who wants to come and research something in particular can get into the weeds, so to speak, of, for example, if I were to do a search on Clarence's reference to the Lone Oak restaurant. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but it was this restaurant in South Lincoln that was actually, the building was made with with rolled straw, and it was an architectural wonder. And it was this incredible steakhouse, and people would go there, and he speaks very highly of this place. And we did a search because we couldn't figure out, and it burned down actually sometime while he was in the war. And we wanted to know more about this. We found some information at the in the Nebraska Historical Society. And when we searched all the letters, he mentioned that place multiple times. So what has happened in answer to your question, Kale, is if I have a document, I really want to utilize that document to its full potential, right? If Clarence Williams is mentioning Collins, who was his general in the Army, I can look at how many times General Collins is mentioned in his collection and where he's mentioning him. And so having the ability to take a letter and not just make it a PDF. So I was recently at a conference at the FDR library that has been, they've digitized countless documents in PDFs. Well, if you go onto a website and you want to search in PDFs, at the moment, that's not available to us. So what we do is we have our students or whoever's working with us actually transcribe those letters. That's why you saw that coding from Clarence's letter. This student sat an entire year and typed out every single word that Clarence ever wrote to his wife. So he got to know Clarence better than his son knew, than Clarence's son knew his father, in a sense. And that established a platform for us to do our research in a different way. It's very time consuming. At the same time, there are tools that will allow us to utilize PDF searches, but that's down the road. And I think what's so precious and amazing, as you saw, we have B. Carp's collection. I know Steve was just telling me that his family has a collection of letters in Yiddish. The minute that you are able to transcribe these things and put them out in the world, we can do research that you haven't been able to see before. We sort of chop through the horizontal letter, and we can see things that weren't discoverable in the past. And that's the excitement of digital humanities.
That is what I find exciting. That and just the interweb that will connect to other sources too. Wherever B. Stern, Pappenheimer, Karp is mentioned, we will be able to find that.
Well, I'll give you an example. Laura Weekly, who does all the metadata work and trains all the students and just knows her stuff at the Center for the Digital Research and Humanities at UNL, said to me the other day, she said that she drove her kids to school in Lincoln for 8 years and realized after noticing that Clarence Williams had put his address sticker on everything that he had in our collection, she would drive by the house where he lived. And just that act of, who are our neighbors? Who is in our community? How are we connected to these individuals who have this very heavy, difficult, challenging story, but they were part of our lives in some way? Everybody that I see here on the screen was connected to a Rachel Rosenberg or a B. Karp or Fred Cater. And these stories influence us as well in some way.
Steve, I noticed you took yourself off mute. Did you have a question or a comment?
I was putting it in the chat. I was wondering when the session would be available for viewing the recording, and if you're going to forward the Zoom link information for
the recording of this will be available tomorrow. actually later today, but tomorrow in the biweekly Federation newsletter, email blast. But Steve, as soon as I have it, I'll be happy to send you it, which would be later this afternoon. It takes a few minutes to process it within Zoom.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else have a question or a comment for Beth?
Beth, have there been any surprises in the research of you knew most of these people that all the people that you've been including you, and you knew them quite well. Have there been surprises of things you found out as a result of going through their personal archives?
That happens all the time. Something happened the other day. I was doing yet some more research on B's story, and I discovered through the USHMM, the Holocaust Memorial in DC, a document that none of us have seen before. So B's parents were able to write her letters and postcards, and she was able to send letters and postcards to them, evidently, as you heard. We have letters that her family was writing to the United States to relatives saying, you need to get my daughters, our family, and you need to get us out. These are stories, these are letters that are not uncommon from that time period, but we just don't, they didn't survive, right? So we have those. Excuse me. But what I discovered was a photo from one of the chateaus in France that was part of someone else's collection, with B and her sister Susie identified on this picture at a chateau that no one has ever heard of from B's collection, including her daughters. So we continued to dig, and it was just by accident that I was doing a search that I hadn't done before, that I found this collection. And then there was another surprise in our translating. Sometimes it's hard to know if an A is an O or an O is an A. And this name Marga Khan, you would think it's maybe Margot Cohen, right? We don't know, because these are unusual names. I Googled Marga Khan to see if we were right or not. Excuse me. And it turns out that there was an individual whose name was Marga Khan. I believe her family was also from Karlsruhe, which was a stop on B's journey. I'm not 100% sure about that. But what happened was they went to the Gurs concentration camp, and evidently this young woman also went to the chateaus. The Jewish underground were able to take children out of the concentration camps. These parents gave up their children to strangers who protected them and hid them in these chateaus. Marga Khan left a collection of hundreds of postcards in addition, and her family found them. Well, her sister had a collection of these postcards. Marga Khan survived and joined the Satmar Jewish community in New York. And Marga and a sister and a brother survived. The brother has 168 grandchildren. So
wow.
Does it have anything to do with our portal? Well, yes, that story won't be included. But the fact is that one of the things that B. Karp would always say is, I have something, if there's nothing else I could say, is that I beat Hitler. And today, B. Karp has numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she would say it in a different way, but I'm not allowed to talk like that on Zoom.
Well, and I have this philosophy that everything is connected, that it is all connected somehow. And so that is a perfect example of when you dig far enough, deep enough, wide enough, you'll find the connections. I love that. Wow. I love that. I know Lynn had her had taken herself off mute. She might have had to go. Let me see.
All right, no, I'm here.
Oh, did
The
you have a
reason
question?
Yes, no, I didn't have a question. I had a comment.
Hmm.
The reason I muted myself is because I just have another friend that just came in. I just wanted to say that I am not technologically anything, and I am so impressed by how all this is done, and it's just unbelievable. And I wish I could, well, maybe I will learn now that I have a little more time to access all this stuff, but it is just, technology is just unbelievable. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything that everybody's doing. So thank you. And it's nice to see people that aren't in Omaha anymore, Stanley Mitchell.
Well, and that echoes Darlene's comment in the chat too. So impressed with all your research and the technology. We have a couple questions from Stephanie. How do you decide what information to put in the archive and what just isn't pertinent to the whole of the database?
My belief is whatever we can get in there, we get in there. But I also have, this team of developers who say we have to have a good sample to tell the story. With Clarence's collection, those letters had a chronologic meaning, and so we have the whole collection there. We have his entire photo album scanned, and it interacts with the letters. So you can see where he was and how his photography followed his tour. But on the other hand, B's collection is in German and French and English, and we don't necessarily have the resources available. We do have translators. So I have carefully gone through her collection and chosen the letters that seemed pertinent or that would give us the most the most reaction to why this collection is together, I guess I want to say. So understanding that there were letters that had 4 different handwritings in German. Some was written in Old German, some was present German, but it appears that while they were in the camps, 2 or 3 different people were writing a letter and sending it out to a relative from a different place. So I said to the translator, I think this is important. I can't understand it, but I think you should translate it. And it turned out to be very, very valuable. Sometimes we just can't put everything in. For example, the Hannah Rosenberg collection, their family donated a huge trunk of their personal artifacts that had been sent over from Germany in 1937 for them to start their new life in Lincoln. Of course, the rest of the family was stuck in Germany. But we have 200 items that have been photographed and scanned. Do you need to see the buttons and the the hairpins on our collection? I don't think everything is important, but I would like you to see their monogrammed envelopes and the winter socks and hat that they used when they went skiing. Every item on our artifact tells a story in some way, so we have had to pick and choose in the collection. And thank you, that was my sister.
And that was a great question. Darlene.
I have a question. So Beth, is there a link ready that we could access this yet, or is it not available for general viewing?
It is still behind password. A password, we're using it in some capacities. I've been working, doing my research surveys with a class at Nebraska Wesleyan, a freshman survey class. So they are looking at how to use primary source resources on the internet, but because the site is not yet designed fully, we're not open. But it will be available in prototype in April, and we'll make sure to talk about that launch when we get there.
Oh,
sorry for the tease.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it big time when we get there. Dr. Cater, I saw you take your microphone off mute. Did you want to say anything? You're back on mute. Let me help.
We're off mute.
Yes,
Beth?
you're good.
Actually, I'm certainly very, very glad I've been able to hear at Dotan and what transcribed today. It's an ongoing revelation that what happened in the past is not 2 lines in the history pages, but real ongoing life stories of people, past and present. Myself, unfortunately, I've been a very slow learner, as you well know. And only most recently, as you know, that I have heard and put together the final pieces of my story of what exactly happened to my family, down to the last brother and half sister that I had. Unfortunately, that hasn't yet been told because of the COVID problem. We just haven't gone and spoken to anybody in the past 2 years. But certainly, Beth, when we get that done and we get a copy that we have of that discussion and presentation that I have, you'll be the first one to get a copy of the whole story. But
That's
thank you
amazing.
so much. Thank you
It's
so much.
amazing, and it's so great that you're here with us today. And we have our volunteers already planned to have a conversation with you and to be able to come and scan and borrow and share your story on this portal as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Cater.
Well, don't need to thank me. Something that I do to repay the memory of my family that I didn't even learn about until I was 21. You know, all this happened back when I was 4 years old in Belgium. But thank you for your discussion today and taking the time to go through all this. It's absolutely fabulous to hear what's going on and what you're doing.
Your story is very precious to all of us.
Yeah.
It's
Like I
so
said,
good.
I've been a slow learner, but I finally got it done.
Slow and steady wins the race. Isn't that what they say?
Sure do.
Oh, I see Shelley's in the office. Now, there's another good question from Stephanie. And I think this is, I'm embarrassed I didn't think of it. So thank you. How can any of us help you in your research and development of the site?
Anyone who would like to volunteer to help us collect these stories, please just let us know. Let me know directly, or Kale or Scott at the IHE. There's a lot of work that can be done at home. Thank goodness for this volunteer portal from UNL. We've been wanting to do volunteer training. Donna, I know, has been waiting to hear from me and some others to learn how to use that, how to put things up onto this holding site. So my feeling is that anything we can do at any time is significant and important at the moment. And all of that will eventually become part of the project itself and will be available for educational purposes and other purposes.
Oh, that is good information. That is really good. Because what I have learned over the last few years, not being a social studies teacher by trade, is that social studies teaching, history teaching, is moving into a method which we call inquiry-based, where they are given some questions and they need to find the answers. Primary sources are becoming of the utmost importance, letters and things like this, rather than letters and primary documents rather than textbooks. And so I see so much potential, not only for maintaining these stories and holding these stories and keeping these stories alive, but for use in the classroom. So of course, my sense of urgency is like, all right, let's get this done. Let's get this done so we can get it out there. Anyone else have any questions for Beth before I turn it back over to Scott?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Beth. This was absolutely amazing. Every time we hear about this project, it just keeps growing and growing and getting more and more exciting. And I can't wait for April for the launch. I would just like to tell everybody about a couple programs that are coming up. We are currently have introduced a new program for IHE called, based on the portraits, called the Portraits of Survival. And we have two more special programs to tell you about. First of all, the portraits are up in the gallery. I encourage, at the JCC, I encourage all of you to see them. They'll be up till through the 28th of November. But coming this Sunday, we have Bowie Tut, who is the executive director of an organization called Aqua Africa, and a survivor of the humanitarian crisis in the Sudan, who will be speaking at the JCC at 1:30. And then Monday night, the film Syndrome K for the Omaha Jewish Film Festival will be shown. And the film is a documentary movie about a made-up pandemic in Italy, in a hospital in a community that was used to save a number of Jews. It's an absolutely fascinating story. It starts at 7 o'clock, and I encourage you to be there. And then next month in December, we are partnering with the Dorothy Kaplan Book Club, and we will have a speaker together. I believe her name is Pam Jenoff. Excuse me if I pronounce her last name wrong. I'm working from home today. And she's going to be speaking on 2 of her books. And we're very excited to be partnering with her. No, the movie is not being streamed. It is live, actually being shown live at the Jewish Community Center in the Levine Theater, but it is not available also with a stream option at this point. So thank you all for being here. This is absolutely wonderful. Kale and I and the rest associated with IHE are just thrilled at how successful this monthly program has been. We could never have envisioned that it would be as successful as it was, and we're looking forward to continuing it every month. And again, next month, the 3rd Thursday in December, is a partnership with the Dorothy Kaplan Book Club. So thank you all for being here. And I did receive from a couple of you a request for the link for today. I will send that out to everybody. Actually, I'll just do it on the announcement for the event, but it also will be tomorrow in the Jewish Federation of Omaha's e-blast that will be coming out. So thank you, Beth. This was amazing as always.
Thank you. It's been an incredible week for IHE. Thanks for all you guys continue to do.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being there.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that last question and putting that in the chat. I didn't even see it. So thank you. My eyes are too many places.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks so much, Beth.
Thank you.